Good morning, thanks for joining me. Now, I'm a month into ownership of my little Royal Enfield 350 Classic and I'm still running in. The running in process is ongoing and I've completed the first service, which I did myself. And I thought it was time to give an update on this smashing little bike and just have a talk about it, tell you what I found about it and tell you how I'm getting on with it. Now, something that springs to mind is the phrase evolution, not revolution. Nature favours evolution, not revolution. Studies from many different fields have demonstrated that small shifts over time can dramatically enhance our ability to thrive. And I think, well, has there ever been a motorcycle that fits that description better than the Royal Enfield Classic 350? Now, it's very easy, and I suppose I should do really, but it's very easy to stand here and reel off a load of the specs on the Classic 350, to talk about the fact it's got a single cylinder 349c air-cooled engine. It's got approximately 20 brake horsepower and it's propelled by a 5-speed gearbox. The engine's got a torque of 27 Newton meters at 6,000 revs. And the overall bike's got a weight and running order of 195 kilograms. Now, we've got a 19-inch front wheel and we've got an 18-inch rear wheel, and both of those contain tubes. 41mm front forks, unadjustable, and the rear twin shock absorbers are adjustable for preload only. The brakes consist of dual-channel Bosch ABS. Up front we've got a 300mm single disc, and at the rear we've got a 270mm disc. Twin pistons on the front and a single piston floating caliper on the back. Now, you could take all this information and frankly be a little bit underwhelmed. Now, if you view the Classic 350 as a collection of individual parts, there's probably, well, almost certainly none of them would win any awards for being the best in class. And here's where evolution comes in. What they have done after all these years is they've produced one of the best, most durable, fit-for-purpose motorcycles in the world. So let's talk a little bit about this evolution that I keep banging on about. Now, the Royal Enfield Bullet is the longest lived motorcycle design in history. Still being produced today, and it can trace its roots back to about 1948. I hear you say, but that's not a Bullet, it's a Classic 350. It is, but the differences are relatively speaking small. Seat, handlebars, headlight, side panels, colour schemes to name a few. But underneath the skin, they're basically the same bike. The same bike that's been in production for all these years. A bike that's been in continuous production due partly to the demise of the British bike industry and the quirk of fate that saw Enfield India formed in 1955 to assemble 350cc bullets in Madras from components that were initially imported from England. and it was initially to satisfy an order of 800 bikes from the Indian Army. So, and this is what makes it so good, evolution. Over the years, the bike has been, how shall we say, honed. Now, it's obviously built to a price, and it's built to satisfy the vast number of customers in the home market who quite rightly view a Royal Enfield as an aspirational buy. It really is an exceptional motorcycle that, as a collection of carefully developed parts, have evolved over all these years to turn it into possibly the best classic/retro motorcycle on the road with a genuine heritage. Now, I've just listened to that back and I'm beginning to sound like an excited, gushing new owner who's trying to convince himself that he's made the right decision in buying the bike. But you know, after 40 years riding bikes, and I've probably owned just as many motorcycles as that, 40 I would imagine, I feel I'm in a fair position to make a sort of informed comment. The engine and gearbox are the highlight. They're the stars of the show. The engine pulls nicely from low revs. It's a very willing little unit with a slick 5-speed gearbox propelling you effortlessly along the road to a lovely soundtrack from the exhaust. It really is a sweet little unit. It's economical too, and self-servicing is easy. We just put 8.68 litres in, 8.68, and it's done 167.6. So I'll do the calculation when I get back. I'll just zero my trip now to see if it gets better or worse as we become running, and we're on our way. Let's get off, eh? Okay, let's talk about the seating position. The triangle of hands, bottom and feet. Well, for me, they're perfectly positioned with just a touch of forward lean. And the seat is probably as good as any I've ever had in standard trim, and I've had a lot of bikes. And just to clarify, I'm a big boy. I'm 6 foot tall and I'm about 240 pounds. So I don't know what that is, about 17 stone, but I find it perfect. It's a great seating position and a great riding position. Moving on to suspension. Now, I think the suspension is fine, but I do note that some sort of commentators, YouTubers, some reviews that I've read have said that the rear shocks are not the best, and that would be the first thing that they would change. Now, I've no intention of changing mine. I find them fine at the moment. But I think the best thing to do is to make your own mind up. I mean, at the end of the day, a pair of rear shocks can be easily changed for relatively little cost if you don't really get on with them. The tyres. Now, the tyres on the bike are from a company called Seat. C-E-A-T, an Indian tyre. And given the relatively modest output of the bike, I find them fine. I am running in February in the UK on some horrible roads, and and the back wheel has, I won't say it's let go, it hasn't let go at all because I wasn't going fast enough for it to let go, but I've had a tiny little slip on 2 separate occasions, but I think that was more down to the road surface, maybe diesel on the road. Certainly on one occasion there was some sort of gravel on the road. So I can't blame the tyres, and I'm pretty sure they're going to be up to the job and certainly okay on dry days. It's just that these roads in the winter time over here, as everybody knows, they're pothole ridden, covered in salt and debris, and they're not the best. So I can't be blaming that on the tyres. Let's have a look at brakes. The brakes are the budget Brembo brakes, and again, they're absolutely fine given the performance of the bike. I thought the first, say, 100 miles, the front brake was a little bit spongy, but to be honest, a few miles just down the road, it seems to have firmed up now, and I feel it's spot on for the bike now. I find the switchgear to be good. It's basic, but it works well. Now the speedo is placed in front of you, obviously in the headlight nacelle, looking really traditional, and yet it's modern. It's got a pleasing sweep when you first switch the bike on, and it's pretty clear to read when you're going down the road. Now, one minor issue I had was that the lower digital area, the little bit underneath the speedo that houses the trip meter, the odometer and the fuel gauge, does seem to suffer from condensation occasionally, and it makes the information that you're trying to read a bit difficult to read at times. Now, it's a minor irritation, it surfaces occasionally, it's not there all the time. It may be a temperature thing over here in this damp weather that we're getting at the moment, and hopefully it'll clear up for the summertime. Other issues. Okay, positioning of the foot pegs. Now, this is probably me, and to be honest, it only happened when I first got the bike, and I'm used to it now. When I first came to a halt, when I first had the bike, the foot pegs seemed to be in the position exactly where I wanted to put my feet down, so almost as if they were in the wrong place. Now this could be me, and it's not happening now that I'm used to the bike, but initially the foot pegs were a minor irritation. And on a couple of occasions when I first had it, I actually switched the bike off when waiting at traffic lights. I'm sitting at a red traffic light, and essentially I haven't got my hands on the accelerator, on the throttle. My hands were sort of in front of me, more or less on the tank. And when I went to move my hand back to the throttle, my gloves caught the engine kill switch and turned the engine off just as I was about to move off. Now, this happened twice, and it doesn't happen anymore now that I'm used to it. And the only other thing I can think of is when I first had it and I took it down to a single seat, when I took the back seat off, there was a mark in the chrome on the back mudguard, which I'm still waiting for the dealership to resolve. I'm expecting to hear from them quite soon, and quite frankly, if I don't, I'm not that bothered. It wasn't a major thing, but if that concerns you, if you look at a previous video that I did highlighting the issue at the time. Overall, and to sum up, I'd like to say it's obvious I love this little bike. It's one of the most genuine, willing bikes you could get. I haven't seen a bad review yet, and it's what motorcycling's all about. You know, it's hard to put your finger on it. You can look at a spec sheet and pore over them, but it's this undefinable sort of X factor, star quality, that's hard to put into words. It's like the feel-good factor that you just can't describe. Motorcycling is not always about horsepower and 0 to 60 time. I think it's fair to say, and I think you've gathered, I really like it. But for now, I'd just like to say thanks for watching and ride safe. Bye. Thanks for joining me. And if you've stuck to the end and you like this sort of stuff, please consider subscribing to my little channel. Leave a comment, give me a thumbs up. It really does help and make it worthwhile.